Many times we can balance hormones not by just doing hormone replacement therapy. If anybody wants to do that, I'm not against it, but there are so many nutrition and lifestyle things that you can do to feel better. And majority of it does come with what we're putting in our body as far as foods. Hello, everyone. Kim here. We are going to talk about hormones today. So hormones are so important that we remain balanced so that we can get the best results in the gym and also with our weight loss journey. And many of you know already that we have a 16-week hormone program, and I've been working with the gals for a year now, and we're having some tremendous success. Number one, we test the hormones. Number two, they get a customized plan based on what their hormone test comes back. So we know exactly what to fix, okay? But today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a hormone that majority of people out there are living with, and that is dysregulated cortisol. Cortisol is the number one hormone imbalance that keep women in a fat storing, energy depleted mode. And that's the number one hormone that does that for us. And I know many of you've heard of the cortisol hormone. Many times it gets, of course, it's the bad rap because it is the hormone that causes us a lot of issues. I call it our tier one hormone because it's the foundation. It's where everything else is kind of revolved around cortisol. If we have a cortisol imbalance, it affects so many other hormones too. So I call it our tier one hormone. If you can see yourself in what I talk about, maybe there's a chance that you want to think about getting tested, or maybe I'm going to give you some activities that you can do, whether you just suspect that you have a cortisol imbalance too. The number one hormone that most people have dysregulated, and that is cortisol. What is cortisol? Cortisol is the hormone. It's our stress hormone. It's the hormone that, number one, it will save our life if we need to run away from a lion or something, because it's going to raise your blood sugar, raise blood pressure so that you can have the energy, that you can think clear to run away from that. So it's a very good hormone for that. It also helps fight inflammation in our body. So many times if you have an issue with maybe a shoulder or a hip or something, you might go to the doctor and get a cortisone shot, okay? Because cortisol helps with inflammation as well. So those are the good things about cortisol. Another thing that it does, it affects our energy. It makes weight loss difficult, even when you're doing all the right things. I see it over and over and over again. If energy is depleted, it's almost impossible to lose weight. So that's the first thing we want to fix a lot of times is our energy. Cortisol also affects our mood. It affects our libido. And the reason it affects that is because when cortisol is activated due to a stressor, all the sex hormones get put on the back burner, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, because the body has to take care of you. It's survival. It's going to save your life. Okay. So it has to get cortisol taken care of. And many of the times, the reason that we gain weight in the belly area is because when cortisol is high due to stress, it has to have a place to go. And there are more receptors in the belly area than anywhere in our body. There's 75% more in the belly area. So it stores it so that we can have that energy for later. It affects our sleep. If we're not getting good sleep, a lot of times it's because cortisol might be too high. Cortisol and melatonin, those are two hormones that are opposite. If cortisol is high, then melatonin is going to be low. Melatonin is your sleep hormone. It has to be activated so that you can sleep. So when melatonin rises, then cortisol lowers. So it can affect our sleep. It also, a lot of times, it affects how we handle stress. Many times we become where everything's a stress. We can't handle stress, and cortisol just continues to be activated because of that reason. So this is the number one hormone that you want to identify if you have an imbalance. And otherwise, other hormones will just spiral out of control and become imbalanced as well. So going back to what is cortisol, it's our stress hormone. It's released from the adrenal glands. And every time you experience a stress, cortisol is released. Okay. And a stress could be these things right here. Maybe I was stressed getting ready for this Zoom call. That's cortisol gets activated. Okay. Or maybe you're working out. That's cortisol. Like I said, something was chasing you, cortisol. You ate something that maybe wasn't right for your body. We're having high sugar. We're having not balanced meals. That's a stress on our body. We're not sleeping. That's another stress on our body. It could be work related stress. It could be family related stress. And we just live a lot of times in this go, go, go world. And we don't give cortisol a chance to calm down. Okay. So, the acute stressors are the lion chases you, your cortisol rises, and you're able to run away from that. And then it's supposed to go back down to normal. But when we become what I call chronic stress, where it stays elevated all the time, that's when we have unhealthy levels of cortisol. And truly, what happens, cortisol, a lot of times, like it has been high for so long that then the body can't make enough of it and then it becomes low. And we almost get into what we call adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure. And, that's where we have to really do things to help support our adrenal glands and make sure that the stress is not just taking over. Okay. So, anyway, we need cortisol. It's very important, but we just want to be able to control our stress because, again, if the adrenal glands become worn out, they eventually stop producing enough to keep our body regulated. A lot of times when that happens, it leads us to having very low energy, like waking up tired in the morning, maybe relying on caffeine to fuel your day. You might be having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. Maybe that feeling of wired at night, but still tired. Experience salty and sugar cravings. That a lot of times is cortisol because it's responsible for balancing out our blood sugar levels. That stubborn belly fat, like I talked about, because in the belly area, that's where the cortisol receptors are, majority of them, so that we can have energy. Okay. So if maybe you've all of a sudden got this belly fat that you didn't have before, that could possibly be due to some dysregulated cortisol. Also being just more resilient to stress, like everything is a stress on you and you just feel like you're constantly having stressors and things that maybe wouldn't bother you before are now bothering you too. High blood pressure or even low blood pressure, maybe feeling dizzy. Like sometimes if you get up quick and you have that dizzy feeling, if that continues many times, it could be due to low cortisol. Joint aches, like I talked about, because again, it's due to inflammation in our body. Cortisol is responsible for helping us to control that inflammation. And then the last one, digestive issues. Cortisol will dysregulate your gut bacteria. You might feel bloated all the time. If you resonate with any of those, you might have unhealthy levels of cortisol and you can start implementing right away, even if you just suspect it. You don't have to test, but the best way to know, of course, is to test. You can implement some of these tips that I'm going to give you if you're like, hey, Kim, yeah, that was me. I feel that, or, my joints, or I can't sleep at night. These are some things that you can start to implement right now to help to balance out that cortisol. Okay. So first thing I do want to say though, is that it takes time to balance hormones. It's not a 10-day quick fix, 21-day challenge. Okay. It takes time. 5 months. It might take 6 months. So the tips that I'm going to give you is like, don't say, okay, I tried that for a week and it didn't work. I didn't feel any better. You have to keep at it because it takes time. Okay. The first thing is there's really no prescription or pills. So if you go to the doctor, number one, they're not going to test your cortisol like I test your cortisol. They're going to do a blood test. Okay. When you do a blood test with cortisol, you don't get a true picture of cortisol because you're only getting one picture, the awakening cortisol. When we test with saliva, that's why I love saliva for the cortisol test, is because you get 4 periods of the day. We test morning cortisol when you wake up. We test noon, we test afternoon, and we test evening. So we can see, because cortisol has to have a pattern. And, like a lot of times, unless your doctor thinks that you have something severely wrong with your adrenals, they're not probably going to let you do a cortisol test. That's just the way it is. So these are some things that you can do right now. Number one, you need to do something every day that puts your body in a relaxed parasympathetic state. Just 5 minutes a day. One of the things that I like to do is just lay and put my feet straight up on the wall. And you might say, okay, what does that do? Number one, it helps gut health too, because blood flows running into your gut as well. And it's going to put your body in a relaxed, calmed state. Don't be hopping out of bed and getting on your phone right away and checking your emails and all of those things. Get up out of bed and either read or I like to lay down, like I said, put the feet straight up on the wall. Then you can maybe do a little meditation. Maybe you like to read your Bible. That's a perfect time to do that as well. Do some yoga stretches and just really be present with yourself. Deep breathe. 5 minutes is all it takes. 5 minutes. Everybody has 5 extra minutes in the day that they can do that to help your body be put in that parasympathetic state. The second thing is reset your circadian rhythm, your sleep cycle. Our body's deepest sleep is from 11 p.m. to 2. If you can sleep good between 11 and 2, it's like your body's getting double the rest. If you're not sleeping, your body won't release weight. Couple things you can do if you have trouble sleeping, make sure you're sleeping in a dark, cool room. The body likes cool temperatures when it sleeps. Dark because whenever we have light, cortisol is activated. Some of my clients that are going through my program and stuff like that, if they have very low cortisol, one of the things that I tell them to do, make sure you get some sunlight on your face the first thing in the morning, because that's going to help rise those cortisol levels. So if blue lights are on, TV's on, you have the lights up in the house and things like that. My husband likes to sleep on the couch a lot of times with the TV on, and cortisol can't calm down and melatonin take over. So you have to reset your circadian rhythm by doing that, going to bed early enough, making sure that you're sleeping in a dark, cool room, and keep those blue lights off and TV lights and so on, so that your melatonin can take over. And yes, you can take melatonin. However, I personally don't like to take a hormone that I have, because then that makes my hormone not work. Okay. So those are some ways that you can help to reset that. Okay. The third thing is exercise. Yes, exercise is very important. However, sometimes too much exercise can dysregulate your cortisol. Your body does release cortisol whenever you are exercising, and it holds on to fat for energy. You might be thinking, well, how do I know if I'm exercising too much? If you are exhausted after your workout and you literally can't function, you might be doing too much. If you're doing a ton of HIIT workouts, back those down to maybe one a week. Weightlifting is going to be your best exercise, hands down, because it's going to help bone health. When you have more muscle mass, you're going to have better bone density. And all of us in this group and listening to this call are, we're in those midlife years where, bone density starts to decrease, as we age. So even if you already have osteoporosis or osteopenia, those are things that you want to make sure that you do. Lift weights. When you exercise and when you do cardio, walking is your best exercise for any suspicion of high cortisol. Get outside, walk 20 minutes in the sunlight, get that sun on your face, and just slow walking. That is one of the best exercise that you can absolutely do. Okay. The fourth thing is reduce foods that are draining your energy. Number one, sugar, refined carbs, caffeine drains our minerals and our energy. Cut back on that. So if you are a coffee drinker, and I love coffee too, but don't let it be the first thing that you pick up in the morning, because when you do that, you're already depleted. When you take your caffeine and move it to after your breakfast, you're going to feel so much better. So instead of grabbing caffeine first thing, I want you to grab water and with lemon, and then take and have some sea salt too. Okay. So pink Himalayan sea salt is what I personally use. And I'll be honest with you, I don't actually put it in my water. I put it in my hand and I lick it. So 1/8 of a teaspoon, a pinch is good. Okay. That's going to nourish your adrenal glands. And that's what we want to do. The lemon is a great detox for your liver. The liver gets bogged down with all of the things, all the hormones and stuff like that too. So we have to do things to nourish the liver and the adrenal glands. A lot of times too, whenever we have high stress in our life, we have low minerals. Our body gets depleted of minerals. One of the best things that you can do is eat foods that are high in minerals and magnesium, copper, zinc, foods like fruits and vegetables. Your foods that are cooked are higher in minerals. Foods that are raw are higher in vitamins. Like broccoli, if you ate it raw, it's going to have more vitamins in it than it does minerals. If you cook it, it's going to have more of the minerals in there too. Okay. So a lot of times the minerals that our body needs are depleted whenever we have high stress. Eating healthy is so important. Many times we can balance hormones not by just doing hormone replacement therapy. If anybody wants to do that, I'm not against it, but there are so many nutrition and lifestyle things that you can do to feel better. And majority of it does come with what we're putting in our body as far as foods. Like I said, just moving that caffeine. If caffeine is your coffee is your go-to in the morning, just eat breakfast first. Do the water because you're already depleted. You just woke up. You're also dehydrated. So you want to replace that, and make sure you drink water first thing. Now, after I drink my water and my lemon, I go ahead and put my reds and greens in there and get those. Those are amazing nutrients for us too, because it has a lot of the minerals that we just talked about. It's got vitamins and so on. So the reds and greens can be put right in there. I'll share with you a couple supplements that are over the counter you can buy or whatever that can also help. If you suspect any of the things that I'm talking about, ashwagandha is a really good supplement for stress. And we have it in a few of our supplements, but you can buy just an ashwagandha on Amazon. There's lots of them. I also have a link to a company called Thorne that has a ton of great supplements too. So if anybody wants that link, you can reach out to me direct and I'll give it to you. Magnesium is another one. If you're not taking magnesium, that's one that is very much depleted whenever we are under stress. There's different types of magnesium as well. A lot of my clients, depending on what their results come back as and what symptoms that they have. For example, if somebody tells me that they're constipated constantly, they don't have very good digestion, I would suggest magnesium citramate. If somebody is having a hard time sleeping, magnesium biglycinate. That's the best one for calming and sleeping and you take that before bedtime. And of course, B vitamins, your B5s, your B12s, all of those are great because they are depleted when we are under high stress, the B vitamins. And also that's our energy too. So those are some basic things that you can start right now and do. But again, like I said, the best way to know is to actually test. And in our group, in our hormone group, I'm actually going to do a little screen share because I want to show you what a test looks like as well. Okay, so I took the name off this person, but this is one of my clients. So this is what the test looks like when it comes back. So we test cortisol, like I said, 4 times a day, morning, noon, afternoon, and night. And anytime you do a test, you're going to see a reference range here that the lab puts. So we always go by optimal ranges, and I go over all that with the client whenever their test comes back. But you're going to notice that this client here has very low cortisol in the morning. And I'm going to show you a chart, a pattern that cortisol needs to follow. It actually needs to be the highest in the morning so that we can have energy to get up. So this person was exhausted. She had joint aches like crazy, blood sugar issues too. Cortisol and blood sugar, insulin work together. But then look at nighttime. Oh my gosh, her cortisol spiked super high at night. So sleep was an issue. And this actually would look like to me like a shift workers, like she's working at night and sleeping during the day. DHEA is another one we test, which is the counter hormone to cortisol. It's also excreted from the adrenal glands, very important hormone for building muscle and also leaning down, losing body fat, because it's the mother hormone to testosterone. We test that. Testosterone is important even for women. We need some of that as well. Testosterone also turns into estradiol or estrogen. So we test estrogen and progesterone, your 2 sex hormones, and those need to balance and have a ratio because we all know that in our years when we're having our menstrual cycle, estrogen and progesterone are kind of like one comes in one part of the month and then another one comes in the other part. They have to work together and they have to balance. Okay. Now I want to show you the pattern of cortisol. This is the results from this client. Okay. So the pattern of cortisol, like I said, needs to start kind of high in the morning. And then it tapers down at noon, tapers down again in the afternoon, and tapers down to almost nothing at night. So this client's dots were here. She wasn't even on the chart in the morning, literally almost zero cortisol. Noon still very, very low. Afternoon still low, not even in the green. But look at nighttime, went skyrocketed up here higher than what it should have even been in the daytime. Okay. So this definitely is a person with dysregulated cortisol because of the fact that her cortisol is not following a specific pattern. Okay. And the reason I show that to you is because when things like this happen, there's so many other things that go wrong. Cortisol is responsible for insulin, which is our blood sugars. If cortisol is dysregulated, maybe we're not having balanced meals. We're overeating on carbs, we're overeating on sugar and things like that. That's a stressor. Those are things that we need to fix in order to balance out our insulin levels too. The 16-week program, do we balance every hormone in 16 weeks? No, we work on it. And it's something that the girls continue to do afterwards. But we've had so many great results of just number one, more energy, feeling better, and definitely weight loss, sleeping better. Those are things that start to happen when you know that you're starting to balance things out. So we go through an entire liver detox because very important that you find inflammatory foods. People a lot of times have gut issues that are causing a lot of stress. So we have to heal the gut. So we go through a 21-day liver detox. And it's not miserable. I hate to even use the word detox. It's just taking out foods, reintroducing them to see what your body responds to. And we all need to be aware of that. I know for myself, we'll talk about thyroid in one of our videos as well. If anybody has thyroid issues, one thing you definitely want to stay away from is gluten, because gluten attacks your thyroid antibodies. And that's a major, major thing. Start right away implementing these things that I shared with you, because it will definitely make a difference in energy, weight loss if you're struggling with that, those types of things too. Key things are nutrition and lifestyle activities that will totally make a difference.